So I said I'm from Auckland, New Zealand, but I'm originally from Brazil. I'm a designer from Brazil, and this is important. I never formally studied design. You see, I come from a small city in Brazil, and to be completely honest, coming to my parents and saying that I was going to go to design school would sound absolutely crazy to them. I had three paths to choose from. I was either going to engineering school, law school, or medical school, and that was it. I actually ended up going to engineering school, but never finished. And but even though we had a pretty simple I have a pretty simple upbringing, and we're not necessarily rich by no stretch of the terms when we were growing up. My dad always figured out a way to bring home really old computers, probably against my mom's will, to for me and my brother to experiment with what he believed was the future. And in one of those occasions, he brought home a computer with, I remember, a CD with a software called Coelho, asking us to do a couple of business cards and pamphlets for his shop. And for that moment on, I got in love. I thought it was absolutely amazing how with design I could learn how to create. Like design was always the tool that I could bring my thoughts and ideas and render them into a screen, and then I can print them and I can put them in front of people and see how people will interact and react with those things that were in my head just a couple of minutes ago or seconds ago. And from that moment on, it was just passion for the field. And fast forward 20 years, I'm a professional designer working with design full time, VP of design at Rome. So I run a design team across 3 countries. And what I want to talk about today is, especially over the last 4 years, over my career, but especially over the last 4 years, I've been having coffees and having chats and interacting with new designers that are coming fresh to our fields, full of ideas and questions. And when I'm talking about new designers, I'm not only talking about young designers coming from university, but I'm also talking about designers, people that are moving on a career transition. So they're working in retail or marketing, and they're moving into design. I'm talking about them as well. And what I see, the feedback that I receive from them is that a lot of time the design industry feels like this to them. So it feels like we have all these new designers knocking at our doors, asking for us to take a chance of them. And designers already in the field, they say, "This is cool. That's cool that you're coming into design." We high five them and we close the door right in front of them, not allowing them to speak, not allowing them to even get a foot to the door. And that's why I wanted to bring this talk, because this is a talk essentially about listening and about inclusion. So I want to bring this photo because I love this photo. This is the photo of what I believe is the most good-looking and talented design team in the world. Yes, that's our team at Rome. This was back in 2019 when we could get together. And this photo was taken like this on a pool, on a swimming pool when it was normal. And this photo was taken on one of our design retreats. Pretty much design retreats were our days when we spend the entire day critiquing our ways of working, giving feedback to each other, looking at our design culture, and making sure that we're improving and we're moving forward together as a team, or have really open and honest conversations. Sometimes we find nice Airbnb houses as well with jacuzzis. But another reason why I want to bring this photo to the conversation is to call attention to one person on my team that I really believe is a good example of a new designer. So the reason why I want to bring her is I will never forget her interview. She was not new. She was not new to the job market when she came to interview with us. Completely the opposite. She was working in marketing for quite some time. She was just new to design, and she didn't have a portfolio when she came to interview. Like, she had a couple of experiments that she was doing on her own time during work hours or sometime after work hours. She had a lot of dribble experimentations and animations and interactions. But even though she was very timid, I would never forget the passion that she demonstrated when she was presenting those pieces of work for us, and especially how well she could explain how she learned and the tools that she used to learn. And of course, we hired her. She was just waiting for someone to give her a chance. We gave her a chance, and I think it was one of the best decisions that I made as a leader. And another reason why I want to bring her to the conversation specifically is today is because we had a chat a few years ago that I'll never forget, that it marked me. So the thing was, we were working on a digital product for a client. And so we just finished the digital branding. And if you're familiar with brand archetypes, we had a hero archetype with a hint of a magician. I went to her. She just joined the team to help us with a couple of visual explorations. And I said to her, okay, so I want this UI to be bold and minimal. The product's very feature rich, financial product. So let's make it very minimal and but bold and simple. So as you imagine, I already had a pretty good idea of what I wanted that brand to look like. And she was showing me a couple of experimentations that she was coming with, but they were not really doing it for me. I was looking at those screens and was like, oh, okay, let's book a time. I want to take a look at your mood boards, what you're looking at. And the conversation went like this. So we went to a room and I said, can I take a look at your mood board? And she was like, okay, sure. And she showed me her mood board full of colors, full of animations and interactions. And it was very different from what I imagined the brand should look like. And I looked at her and said, well, this looks a little busy to me. Let me show you something. Let me show you what I mean by bold and minimal. And what I proceeded to show her was exactly a mood board of every designer that you know that dresses in all black. So I showed her my mood board that looks like this. And it was funny because we were talking about, approached her, was talking about this talk specifically in this conversation, just briefly on the making of this talk. And this talk didn't mark her, and this answer didn't mark her as much as it marked me. But I remember she looked at me and said, I'm not sure if I like it. This looks boring. And yet, as you can imagine, this was my internal reaction. I didn't react like that at the meeting at our chat. It's just not my style. And I had the awareness at the time to see that hurt. I felt how she was attacking a deep belief that I had about design, and I decided to say, okay, take it on board. What you believe, it makes sense, and let's reconvene in a couple of days. I want to take a look at the explorations next. And during that entire week, I couldn't stop thinking about, did I make the right choice of hiring her? Because I felt attacked. I felt that she was really challenging something that I really cared about, and I left thinking she didn't care, that she doesn't care about good design. It was like, she didn't care about good design. Maybe I should buy the Vignelli Canon and make her read cover to cover. What should I do? Get her a couple of Paul Rand books. But after some time thinking about where she comes from, she's from China. She grew up with a completely different alphabet than me, completely different references. Thinking about where she come from, she didn't come from any design school or art school. She was working in marketing already. And I start thinking about that context, and I realized that the problem was that it was not the problem that she did not care about good design. What she did not care was for my European-centric aesthetic of minimalist design, and they're very different things. Minimalism for her, you see, how can I blame her? Minimalism for her wasn't sophisticated at all. It was actually boring. She grew up surrounded, and she was used to a breadth of different images, and she grew up with WeChat and using WeChat, TikTok. WeChat, that for us is highly complex. For her, is just making her life more simpler. She's using Instagram. She's used to seeing T-shirts in storefronts, and she'll see all of those things calling her attention as equally interesting. And I think it's funny how during the making of this talk, I went to check her mood boards to see if she's actually looking at some. She actually took it on board, a couple of the references that I showed her, and I found this. So English is my second language, and it's her second language as well. So I don't know if she did this on purpose, because I made mistakes like this myself. But I thought it was brilliant how she had one reference there, and she called that mood board simplistic instead of simple. All of that conversation that I had with her led me into this path of thinking and researching why do we value, for example, white space. White space is something that only high-end magazines could afford. Low-end magazines couldn't afford to spread a content across 2 pages. Why do I as designers choose just 5 typefaces, the one that I like? Is that style for my mood board what I'm using to separate professional designers from amateurs and young designers and new designers coming to the field. Is that how I measure success, where I measure what is good? Why I'm still looking at theories created by designers that don't look like me, definitely don't look like her. They were created half a century ago and probably got lost in translation. Why we're still using old maps to guide us into new territory. And all of this is what I believe is exciting about this new generation of designers, because they're starting to question why we do what we do and how we do it, and more importantly, do our practices are still relevant to the highly complex, diverse, multicultural world that we live in today. They understand that systemic issues can't be ignored anymore when we're designing something, and I personally think that's a really good thing, because nothing changes if nothing changes. But all of this nonconformist that is coming from them and all of these questionings raise me another question, that is, are organizations, teams, leaders ready for new designers to thrive? Are we ready to create the space where these ideas can thrive and they can actually, and we can all move forward productively as a field? I want to start with the first barrier that I see new designers facing when they're trying to get into the field. That's pretty much the hiring process and the beginning of applying to the job market. So I don't know if you're familiar with this great essay from uxdesign.cc, and it highlights the sameness of current case studies. I would definitely recommend you check it out if you haven't already. But for me, when I read that, it really shows to me how designers sometimes are asked to conform to the status quo even before they become designers, even before they come to organizations. And I'm going to be honest, as organizations, we're really good at making people conform to the status quo ourselves. Um, and that makes me feel that we're putting designers sometimes in boxes too early. The essay shows how a lot of boot camps or design schools, they're asking designers to follow the same artifacts on the same checklist process over and over again to solve problems. And I could be here just thinking about I could be here just talking about boot camps, but I think there's a lot of you're gonna find a lot of people online talking and criticizing that. But I'd actually want to talk about, it's just not the problem. I don't think the problem is just in education. I do believe it's a supply and demand issue. Thinking, if boot camps are teaching designers to do that, and design schools are teaching designers to do that, is because hiring managers are probably asking to see that. And I do believe this is a problem. It's funny how I still talk sometimes with hiring managers, and they come from interviews with new designers coming to the field, or young designers with amazing portfolios sometimes, and amazing outcomes. And they leave the interview saying, "I'm not sure if this person is good enough. I couldn't see a process there." And I can't stop thinking, and sometimes I even ask, did you not see a process, or did that process just didn't look like the process that you currently have in your organization? Because those are two very different things. Everyone has a process. Everything they create goes through a process. Maybe that process is just different. And one thing that's funny is, because of that supply and demand, because hiring managers want to see those artifacts on that checklist following the same order. One designer posts their case study online, and another designer copies that case study, and another designer copies that case study, creating a mimetic, vicious cycle and creating that sea of sameness of everything that you see online, which counterintuitively makes it even harder for hiring managers to see who is standing out and what is unique about you when you're actually applying for a job. So I'm a hiring manager myself, and I do have a few tips for hiring managers here and for designers alike. So if you're a hiring manager, please don't ask to look into that same boring persona template and how they created that during their boot camp. Please just incentivize seeing how people learn. That's one of the most important things. Try to see how they learn, how they communicate, the mental models that they're using, understand their unique personality, where they come from, and what they can bring that is unique to your team. And designers, don't be afraid. If you're getting to the market now, don't be afraid to use your case study to show your opinions, your personality, your cultural background, your critical thinking skills, your range of skills. If you came from hospitality, bring that to your design work. If you come from philosophy, bring that to your design work. Show what is unique about you, and show us why do you care. That's going to make you stand out. So, all right. So I think we kicked the first small gate there on the hiring process, just getting, helping designers getting into organizations, hopefully. And I want to talk about diversity just a little bit because I don't think I need to be here in 2021 preaching to you why diversity is important, but especially for this new generation of designers, they want to feel represented among their peers. You're not going to believe the amount of designers that I currently mentor, Black designers or designers from BIPOC communities, from Brazil, from other countries. And they're working design teams that a lot of designers want to work at. And when we chat on our one-on-ones, they're thinking about leaving. They come to me and say, well, people don't hear my opinions here. I don't feel my voice is heard. I don't feel represented among my peers. And I think that's a problem because diversity is very important, but it's also not enough. We can't stop there. Those individuals, they need to feel that they belong. They need to feel safe to speak once they are inside organizations. You see, asking tough questions and questioning the status quo as designers, that's our job. By critiquing my style and by making me think differently, the young designer from my team, she was doing her job. And I believe as a design leader, create a space where she could criticize me and she could challenge me and we can move forward productively as a team and as an industry. That's just my job. I brought this slide from the new book from Adam Grant, Think Again, which I definitely recommend you checking out, and talks a lot about psychological safety because that's the topic that I'm going for here. I'm not going to read the individual points because you can 100% read faster than I can speak, but I just want to highlight the differences. When you don't have psychological safety, people hide mistakes on teams or organizations. People hide mistakes and withhold ideas. They aim to prove themselves and protect their image. They're always within their shells. They're always protecting their armor. They're not going to put themselves out there because they're scared of being punished. But when you do have psychological safety, people admit errors and voice suggestions. It's beautiful to see they strive to improve themselves and protect the team, not just themselves. They wanted to be criticized, but they feel comfortable with that environment so we can all move forward productively and they can grow together. In contrast to that photo of our team on the pool, this was last year's design retro and retreat. For obvious reasons, we did that all online. And at our design team at Rome, defining how the team operates, our processes, our values, our principles, how we show up, how we interact with each other, requires input from everyone. For me, it doesn't matter if we joined the team a week ago or 5 years ago. It doesn't matter for me if you just move into becoming a designer, if you just became a designer, or if you have been a designer for 20 years, everyone has a voice and all those voices should be heard. And my role during these sessions when we're doing retros and this team-wide critiques of our culture is just to facilitate the space and to be silent and listen. And I'm going to be honest, sometimes I see themes coming through or feedbacks that make me very uncomfortable because I look at them and think, oh, I thought I had solved that before. Or I don't really agree with that, but I think it's my responsibility is not to correct them at the time and it's not to make them scared of sharing their opinions. My responsibility is to create the space where they feel comfortable about sharing those opinions widely and helping us progress forward together. I don't think our team is perfect yet. We are definitely every time trying to the team is growing really fast, but we're always trying to be better than we better than last time, better than we were last month and last year. But one thing that I use to gauge success of how our psychological safety is going is by seeing that we do have a company-wide anonymous survey. And when I look at that anonymous survey, I rarely see feedback coming through that an individual from our team wasn't comfortable about sharing that on even either a one-on-one with their manager or with myself or on these team-wide engagements. And that makes me very optimistic about our future and shows me that we are actually on the right path. And I have a couple of tips here from things that I learned by building this team over the past 4 years that I think might be valuable for you if you're a design manager, if you're starting your team, or even if you're the senior most person on your team and you have a couple of new young designers joining your team, so you can foster this safe environment. When you give someone a job to do, please tell new designers what needs to be done instead of doing it or how to do it. Let them solve. You're going to be surprised with the diversity of thoughts and process that will come from that. When they come and show you the work, don't go attacking and saying, or just criticizing and saying, "I would have done this," or "I wouldn't have done that." Please just look at the context. Ask for context first. See how they learn through that process, and then guide them later. Incentivize collaboration and experimentation over competition and perfection. Allow people to speak up in whatever way is more comfortable to them. I said in our organization, we have the anonymous surveys, we have one-on-ones with managers and mentors weekly, and we have the team-wide engagements on retros and retreats. And I think it's important every person will feel comfortable with a different channel. It's important to have all those channels. Focus energy in setting values and principles instead of forcing your opinions on others. For me, if my team is looking and thinking exactly like me, I think I failed. And this, taking a page of Brené Brown's book, talking about the power of vulnerability. As a leader, please, let's lead from the bottom. Let's be vulnerable. Let's ask to have our views challenged. Admit when you're wrong. Make time for your team members. Make time to build relationships. That's your job as a manager. And make time to listen. Before I finish, I do have one last personal story. This one almost literally very close to my heart. And this was a conversation with my partner. So a couple of years ago, she decided to transition from motion design and animation into digital product design and UX. And I remembered that chat because she looked at me and said, "I want to become a product UX designer." And being a designer for my entire life and a professional designer, I didn't feel pumped at that time. I actually felt scared. And I felt scared because she's such an amazing person. She's very creative. She graduated in film. She thinks very differently, and she tackles every problem that you put in front of her in amazing creative ways. And I was very scared that she was going to join a field that will put her into a box. They will make her follow the same checklist of processes and deliver the same artifacts to solve problems. I was really scared that she was going to join a field that would not allow her to bring herself and her creative energy into work. And I was really scared that she was going to join a field that would dictate what she should look at, how she should behave, and how she should think. And especially being a Latina woman, here we are immigrants in another country. I was scared that she wouldn't have the space to criticize, to voice her opinions, and to actually move forward and grow and learn. Well, that fortunately didn't happen. She joined an amazing team that supported her throughout that entire transition. And I think we couldn't be more grateful for that. And recently, actually, she just got promoted a couple of weeks ago. Really excited about that. And she got promoted from the junior position to a product designer position. And just during our meal when we were celebrating, I thought it was funny where at one point, she looked at me and said, "Oh, I'm a little bit scared because I'm not a junior anymore. So does that mean that I can keep asking stupid questions? So will people now come to me just for answers?" Which touches in a couple of the topics that I mentioned during this entire talk, but also I think this reaches into beginner's mind and probably a little bit of imposter syndrome, but I think I digress. That's the topic probably I can create another entire talk on this. But just to relate back to my own story, one of the reasons why I felt scared was boxing her creative energy in. That's very related to my own story because design was the tool that I used to learn. It is still the tool that I used to learn, and I'm passionate about coding. I'm passionate about business. I'm passionate about philosophy, about science. I think all of those skills that I try to bring to my work that make me a designer, makes me a better designer. So you see, design for me, I was scared because of the box, and because design for me is multidisciplinary, always was and always will be. And if you're a designer, please don't let them box you in. Just an overview to finish this talk. There is a new generation of designers at our gates today and our inboxes asking for us to take a chance of them, challenging the status quo, shouting about the importance of diversity, inclusion, multiculturality, individual identity. And I believe it's our responsibility as designers in the field, as leaders, to create space where they can feel that they belong, where they feel safe, to challenge, to feedback, to experiment, to grow, to thrive. I'm still learning myself. At one point in my career, I made all the opposite of all of the tips that I'm giving here today. Um, but I think we only become better if we take time to understand, to listen, to be uncomfortable, to put ourselves in sometimes uncomfortable positions as individuals, as leaders, so we can all be vulnerable and listen and grow together. And if you're having trouble on where to start off with that vulnerability and listening journey, I have a last question for you that might help you start. How often do you ask for advice from people that are less experienced than you? Thank you.